and multi-Grammy nominee, and someone who we've worked with in the past on a couple of things. I'd like to bring out Moby. So, I'm not even sure, do you have that picture, Pete? We actually worked together a long time ago. We were working for music therapy, raising some money for music therapy, and it was such a wonderful thing you helped us out with in New York. And for the audience that remembers Carl Bruin, that's the gentleman on my left. He was just such a fine leader in our industry. I just wanted to, I thought this would just be a great picture to thank you for that music therapy plug, but also remember Carl Bruin. We hear one round of applause for our dear friend Carl.
That was a particularly funny evening because you'll see Chris Christopherson, or you would have seen him, the picture is still there. I got to play Me and Bobby McGee with Chris Christopherson.
Yeah.
This is completely irrelevant to the world of EDM. So I played Me and Bobby McGee with Chris Christopherson, and at one point I went up from a G major to an A major, and in his gravelly voice he said, "No, Moby, that's the way Janice used to do it. I never sung it like that."
Okay. That was one of those evenings where things come together. Yeah. You know, the idea was to talk about, for our members, to help them understand the differences that are happening now. But you came up through the traditional. You played music. You are a classically trained musician. You played in a punk band. Talk about some of your coming up and how all this evolved.
I started playing classical guitar when I was 9 years old. My mom was a classical pianist. So I played classical guitar, and I studied jazz fusion and music theory, and I had a guitar teacher who just wanted me to go on and be like the next Larry Carlton. And then I discovered The Clash and broke his heart. And then I played in hardcore punk rock bands. I was in New York in the early 80s, and in New York in the early 80s, all these different types of music coexisted. Like you'd go to a club like Danceteria, and there'd be a hip-hop DJ on one floor, the Bad Brains on the next floor, an indie rock band on the next floor, a house music DJ on the next floor, and I got exposed to electronic music through that. And also, if you remember, there was that period in the late 70s, early 80s, when all of the like new wave and rock bands got into drum machines and synthesizers.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's New Order, Depeche Mode, whomever. And so my goal as a musician, having been raised in the world of virtuoso classical and jazz fusion, was not to care so much about the performance as to more the way the music affected me emotionally.
And you use those transitional instruments to achieve that voice, right? I mean, so how did that happen, going from traditional to more of the electronic instruments that you programmed and things like that? Smooth transition, or was it just an evolution?
Just sort of hybridizing everything,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the beauty of contemporary recording, is because like in the ye olden days, MIDI took up no memory and was really easy to work with, and audio was these huge chunks of expensive memory. To sound like a complete old guy, I was just reminiscing about my first ever standalone hard drive, and it was 1 gig, and it was $2,000. And the rule then was a gig was $2,000, so if you wanted 10 gigabytes of memory, you had to spend $20,000. And now that's like a greeting card.
You said something interesting about how today people are writing with very little musical background in some cases and having great success with that. How do you weigh in on that?
Well, a lot of my friends who are more traditional musicians hate the fact that people have success without any musical background. But to me, it's like that's the world that we live in. You know, there's some amazing musicians making great records, and then there's some people who literally don't know how to play music, but they're still making great records. And railing against that or complaining about it it's akin to like yelling at a train as it goes by.
Yeah.
You know,
Protesting gravity, right?
Yeah, protesting, like it's like being a Republican. You know, sorry.
Oh, look at the time. Okay, let's have a great show, everybody.
No, I respect people who hate science. I am wondering, I just was having this conversation, like, what is Republicans gonna, like evolution doesn't exist? Climate change, is it next? It's like the earth is flat and there's no gravity? Sorry, Republicans, if you're here, I'm sorry for you.
And this is when we came back from commercial. So anyway, Moby, tell me.
No, I mean, but what I was going to say was, great records have always been made in a myriad of different ways.
That's right.
You know, by virtuoso musicians and by people who have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
And ultimately, the way an individual responds to music subjectively is the criteria by which music should be evaluated. You know, my guitar teacher, who only liked like Eruption by Van Halen or Larry Carlton, he couldn't listen to simple music and love it.
Yeah.
But sometimes simple music is that much more direct and effective.
Yeah. That's art. That's what art is.
Yeah.
And we serve artists, and that means we have to go where they're going and find ways to help them be more creative.
Yeah.
Lots of experience in buying equipment.
Oh boy, yeah.
So tell us a little about where you shop, how you shop, what do you like, what do you don't like?
Well, my first experience going to music stores, and I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to this, was going to Sam Ash and Manny's on 48th Street in New York. Incredible.
Yeah.
And being like a 15-year-old punk rock kid and being completely ignored by the metalheads playing Eruption on their Ibanez guitars. I'd be like, I just want to buy that cheap guitar in the corner, and they would ignore you. My experience at music stores improved after that. And now, I'm trying to figure out, I hope I don't say anything in politics, except for the Republican thing.
Yeah, we've already crossed that barrier. I think anything else is
I'm
fair
much more
game at this
interested
point.
in people's experience in the world of like music retail and whatnot. Is I buy music equipment everywhere. You know, I
think that's the point.
like high-end stuff at Vintage King in Los Angeles. I go to Guitar Center. I buy stuff online from Sweetwater. I download software. I buy stuff off eBay. So I feel like from a musician producer perspective, it's great because you have all these different ways to get different types of equipment.
Yeah.
You know, like I can buy sight unseen crappy stuff online. You know, go on eBay and you buy a drum machine, you're like, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Super high-end stuff at a place like Vintage King, you know, where it's like a one-on-one relationship and there's no one else in the store. Go to Guitar Center to buy strings, guitars, synths, etc. Or go on Sweetwater as well, like if you need stuff that you don't need to experience in person.
Yeah.
And so I've never been a music equipment retailer, so I don't want to be so presumptuous as to speak to that experience, but I imagine availing yourself of these 4 different platforms seems like it's some component of a successful business model.
Yeah, that's the change. It strikes me as that's the key thing we need to zero in on, that it's multi-platform, when you want it, a sophisticated view of things, knowledgeable consumers.
And in the world of EDM, a lot of guys in the world of EDM do everything with software.
Yeah.
But software is both very expensive but limited. And like all my friends who come up in the world of producing with software, the first time they touch, by the way, I'm rarely starstruck, but Dave Smith and Tom Oberheim were sitting here. That's
pretty cool.
I haven't, the last selfie I took was with Bill Clinton. And backstage, I like humbly approached them, like Wayne in Wayne's World with Alice Cooper, and I was like, "Can you just take a selfie with you guys?" Like, so, the first time an electronic musician who only works with software touches an analog synth and actually touches like, you know, the VCO or the LFO, all of a sudden, their world expands. And I think retailers ideally should be sort of like promoting that experience. You know, like you're selling equipment to people who already know what the equipment does, but you're also introducing equipment to people who've never had that hands-on experience with equipment. And that's something that can only happen in person.
Yeah.
So I think that if I ran a music store, that would be a huge part of what I do, is taking people who only have played around with software and introducing them to actually the world of physical equipment.
The discovery moment. That's, you know, we had a guest here once said the retail role is to be the benevolent big brother who puts his arm around you as you walk in and say, dude, you gotta see what we just got. You know, you've gotta play this. And that's an inspiration to the stores, to be that place.
And one thing to that is the years of my life I've spent like going to a music store to buy strings and leaving with a synthesizer. You know, like you're like, walk in, you're like, I just want a little thing to like wind my tuning heads. I've got $6, and then you leave $3,000 later because you heard something going on over there.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I did always want a 12 string. I did always want, you know, an Oberheim Matrix 1000. I did a
Important lesson, 1,000 tickets to an EDM festival.
They're all on drugs. Okay, sorry. That didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. You asked what you'd be surprised about. That's not surprising.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, you know, are they musicians? Are any of them going to become musicians, or is that just their generation of Woodstock? Its version of Woodstock.
That's what's interesting is traditionally when you have a festival, people go to the festival because they want to see their favorite musicians playing the songs that they know and love. The EDM festivals, it's very egalitarian, and the focus isn't on the performers or the DJs, the focus is on the audience, which is why they're so successful. You know, like if you go to a rock festival, all the lights, everything is focused on the band. When you go to an EDM festival, everything's focused on the audience.
Interesting.
Which is why,
clearly I've never been.
Why middle-aged guys like myself can stand up there and people just don't pay that much attention. And they're like, oh, that looks kind of like my dad.
But he's waiting in the car to take us home afterwards.
Yeah, he's at car selling drugs to teenagers.
Well, on a happier note, you'll be pleased to know that Moby, right after here, is going over to talk to all the college students and the future music teachers that we have next door at the NAMM Foundation Lounge. So I know that our future's in good hands, thanks to you. Oh, seriously, this is a huge education to us. I mean, I think we need to know more about it. We need to relate to it. You know, we're all in danger of being that old guy who, you know, in my day, we didn't have all this acid stuff, you know. And it's like, well, no, we had all that stuff and more, but it changed, and now it's this, and we have to adapt, you know.
And ultimately, there's room for everything. You know, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be just software that someone cracks, you know, off of a BitTorrent site. It can be software with old analog boxes, new analog boxes, mics, cables, preamps, guitar, everything. You know, like a good electronic music studio is mainly analog and physical gear.
Well, I think that's the lesson. I've already got 2 or 3 take-homes from this one. We got to get you over next door. Okay. But first of all, we wanted to give you an award this year because A, you're helping us with music therapy. You've been a wonderful voice for music education, and there's a scholarship named after you at City College in Los Angeles. You've just been one of those guys who gave back, and from a grateful industry, I'd like to make you our 2015 Music for Life Award winner. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all you've done. So that is for you, my friend. Well, thank you. And just to be clear, we did not talk politics before this. We kind of left that out. Thank you, Thanks. That's for you. Okay, well, on that note, so if anyone was wondering if this was scripted or not, those are erased, right? We're all good with that? And now I will go back to my day job and get the show open. Thank you, everybody. Have a great 2015. Have a great NAMM show. Thank you for being here.